Hey there, it's Julia. Welcome back to Julia's Storytime. Today's episode is going to be quite out there, so get ready. We're embarking on a journey through history to explore some of the wildest and most peculiar medical treatments ever attempted. Seriously, some of these will make you wonder how humanity managed to survive without modern medicine. I promise, it's going to be one of those episodes that makes you think, how could anyone have considered this a good idea? So, grab your snacks and prepare for a strange journey through history's weirdest methods people used to heal themselves. Let's dive in. All right, let's kick things off with something truly baffling. Imagine it's the 18th century in Europe and tobacco wasn't just for smoking. It was considered a miracle cure. Doctors believed that tobacco could stimulate the body and even save lives. But here's where it gets really strange. They weren't just having patients smoke it, they were using it as an enema. Yes, you heard that right. Pumping tobacco smoke directly into a patient's rectum was seen as a legitimate medical procedure. This method was especially popular in emergency situations, like trying to revive someone who had nearly drowned. The logic? Tobacco contains nicotine, a stimulant thought to kickstart the body's systems. And while it might have caused a brief jolt of energy, that improvement was fleeting. What they didn't know back then was that nicotine, delivered in such a concentrated way, could actually lead to poisoning, causing nausea, dizziness, and even convulsions. The risks didn't stop there. With limited understanding of hygiene, the crude devices often caused gut infections, making an already desperate situation far worse. Can you imagine being resuscitated only to face a whole new set of problems? It's the kind of historical footnote that's both fascinating and horrifying. Let's just say I'm grateful modern medicine doesn't involve, well, smoke and mirrors like this. Next up, we have chicken blood therapy. Yes, you heard that right. Chicken blood directly injected into the bloodstream. Back in the 1920s, particularly in rural China, some people genuinely believed that this method could cure almost anything. The idea came from traditional beliefs that animal blood carried vitality and life force. And what better way to absorb that energy than by injecting it straight into your veins? Here's how it worked. They'd slice a chicken's neck, draw fresh blood, and inject it into the patient. It was thought to help with everything from headaches to tuberculosis, and early adopters often claimed they felt a surge of energy afterward. But modern knowledge tells us that this was likely just psychological, more about belief than biology. Unfortunately, the reality was far grimmer. Chicken blood, untreated and full of bacteria, often caused severe infections. Patients risked blood poisoning, allergic reactions, and even immune system disorders. In Shanghai, a report found that 16.6% of patients experienced adverse effects, including fever, rashes, and even anaphylactic shock. Some recovered, but many didn't. The phenomenon became so popular that chickens were in high demand, with prices even rising in some areas due to the surge in popularity of this miracle cure. While some medical journals of the time pointed out the lack of evidence behind the treatment, word of mouth and anecdotal success stories helped it gain traction across communities. It's wild to think how far people would go in search of a cure back then. Would I try this? Let's just say I'll stick to my multivitamins. Thank you very much. All right, buckle up, because this one takes unusual medicine to a whole new level. Let's talk about fecal therapy. Yes, poop is medicine. This isn't some modern shock tactic. It actually dates back to ancient Egypt and medieval Europe. Back then, people were so desperate for cures they turned to, well, anything. In ancient Egypt, crocodile dung was thought to have contraceptive powers. Women were told to insert it as a form of birth control. Now, looking back, it's hard to imagine how anyone thought this was a good idea. But they truly believed it could alter the environment inside the body to prevent pregnancy. There might have been a physical explanation behind this. Dried crocodile dung could create a hardened material, functioning as a rudimentary physical barrier, similar to how modern cervical caps work. However, this barrier was undoubtedly crude, unhygienic, and likely to cause severe infections and discomfort. Cultural beliefs also played a role. Crocodiles held a special status in ancient Egyptian society as symbols of strength, mystery, and authority. This reverence likely extended to their dung, which was seen as a vessel for the crocodile's supernatural power. People believed that this material, taken from such a powerful animal, could exert a protective influence, whether it was to prevent pregnancy or act as a charm against other perceived dangers. Of course, these ideas were deeply rooted in superstition and the symbolic power of animals in ancient culture, not science. Meanwhile, in medieval Europe, things didn't get any less bizarre. Doctors prescribed remedies like mixing dried dog poop with honey to treat sore throats, the reasoning. Honey's sweetness was thought to soothe the throat. And, well, no one really knows what they believed dog poop added to the mix. It's likely that dog poop, like crocodile dung, was given symbolic meaning. Honey might have represented divine sweetness to counteract evil, while the dog poop was seen as a purifying or demon-banishing agent, though how anyone arrived at this conclusion is anyone's guess. Unfortunately, the reality was far from divine. These concoctions were a breeding ground for bacteria, spreading infections and making patients even sicker. But why did anyone trust such a remedy? At the time, doctors held significant authority in society, and their prescriptions were rarely questioned. Their knowledge was often based on ancient texts or what their mentors had taught them. Once a remedy like this gained traction, it could spread quickly, with few daring to challenge its effectiveness. Religion also played a huge role, influencing every aspect of daily life, including medicine. Honestly, it's incredible what lengths people went to in the name of medicine. I get it. They didn't know better. And they were working with what they had. But can you imagine walking into a doctor's office today and hearing, "Have you tried adding a little poop to your routine?" Hard pass. Let's talk about one of the strangest and creepiest practices from history, corpse riding therapy. This unusual method was recorded in the 14th century Europe, where some people believed that lying on a freshly buried corpse could cure them of illness. Sounds like a plot twist in a ghost story, right? The idea behind it was tied to the belief that life force lingered in the body after death. Sick individuals were told that by physically connecting with a recently deceased person, they could absorb their remaining energy. In reality, it was likely driven by sheer desperation. When other remedies failed, people were willing to try almost anything. The practice wasn't just limited to Europe. In certain Indian tribes, it was thought to cleanse someone of evil spirits. Tribal healers would guide sick individuals to lie on or even sit astride a corpse in elaborate rituals meant to transfer energy or remove curses. While there was no scientific basis, these beliefs were rooted in spiritual and cultural traditions that placed importance on the connection between the living and the dead. Of course, the risks were enormous. Handling decaying bodies exposed people to harmful bacteria and viruses, leading to even worse illnesses. It's hard to say how many truly believed in the effectiveness versus how many were swept up in superstition and hope. What's fascinating to me is how far people were willing to go when faced with fear and uncertainty. Would I ever try it? Definitely not. But it does make you wonder what we'll look back on in 100 years and think, what were we thinking? Speaking of remedies that make you scratch your head, let's talk about one that's as peculiar as it gets: dried frog poultices. Imagine this. It's 17th century England, and people are convinced that tying a dried frog around their neck could cure everything from sore throats to indigestion. Yes, a frog, not as a pet, but as your personal, albeit slimy, medical assistant. So, why frogs? Well, frogs were often seen as mystical creatures in folklore, with their skin believed to absorb sickness or toxins. They lived in both water and land, which might have added to their perceived healing powers. Combine that with a lack of medical understanding at the time, and voila! A dried frog becomes a symbol of hope for the sick. The process itself was as simple as it was strange. Find a frog, dry it out, and wear it like an uncomfortable necklace. Some people even believed the frog would draw out their illness overnight. Of course, it didn't. Instead, these poultices often caused rashes or allergic reactions because of the bacteria on the frog's skin. Why did people cling to such an odd belief? It likely stemmed from desperation and the human tendency to connect natural elements with healing. Plus, any temporary relief could have been chalked up to the placebo effect. After all, if you think a frog necklace is curing your sore throat, you might just start feeling better, at least for a little while. Or perhaps some genuinely believed their cold had improved thanks to the frog, when in reality, it was just the natural course of recovery. Imagine if frogs could think. They'd probably be wondering, I'm just an ordinary frog. Why am I being held responsible for this? So, which one of these bizarre treatments made you do a double take? Was it the tobacco enema or maybe the corpse riding? Or do you secretly think the dried frog poultice deserves a comeback? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm dying to hear which one shocked you the most. And hey, if you enjoyed this dive into history's strangest cures, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and ring that bell so you're always in the loop for more quirky stories. Who knows? Maybe next time we'll uncover something even wilder. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in the next episode of Julia's Storytime. Bye for now.